Jamal Parker, come on, Laffy, you late as hell today, and I thought I was bad, and I'm black.
Yeah, we got people in the chat here which you know what's funny about this? Nobody blames me for being late. It all got thrust onto you somehow.
It's always my fault, and I'm not sure why. David Eckenrod, this is a bit for him at this point. I feel like the clocks at the Loughran mansion need to be reset. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm sorry. We're here. Happy to be with you. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL strategy show. Man, Jamal got me going on that. That was good. We're talking Sims today. We got 10 games. It's ugly. It's ugly. I mean it's
in fairness, it's all a little bit ugly this year. Like we see these primetime games. There have been some good ones, but there's been a lot of ugly football this year. The game that I'm looking forward to the most is unfortunately the early London game, which isn't going to be on the main slate. But yeah, it's
Germany.
Germany. My bad. So there are good games, but they're like isolated sometimes, kind of weird spots. And yeah, Thursday night ones generally haven't been good in the main slate this weekend. Not really the best in terms of games, but we got value to find for you guys anyway.
Well, just to be clear, and I think you'd agree with me on this, I think ugly is when I say ugly, that's not a bad thing. I like these type of slates. Like, honestly, I prefer the type of slates where you have to do a little bit more to find the good value and to be a little bit different, and where there's like a handful of good plays and everybody's on them, but there's actually more good plays that just aren't chalky. I like these ugly lower total slates. Honestly, if you had told me, Greg, that I could have a 10-game slate with a bunch of low, like sub 40-point totals, some low 40-point totals, or I could have a 10-game slate where 7 of them are 48 plus, I would take the low scoring, low total slate every single time.
Yeah, and then I mean the other thing too is if we're going to make individual game stacks, only one of them has to go off, or one team has to go off for one of those stacks to end up looking good. So I'm interested to see what the Sims end up showing us, and we're about to dive into it.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking for Jeremy Savage. You guys killing it today, man. Well, I guess I'm one of you guys then. Anyway, let's see. There were one comment I just wanted to point out from earlier. Let me find it.
Is it Chris John? There's a lot of these things taken out of context. It really resonates with my mindset in college, where you saying there's nothing wrong with a little bit ugly, Lofty. I agree. There's times where I was like, hey, ugly, that could be a little bit easier. Nothing wrong with ugly. And then Chris Johnson in the chat saying 2 5s beats out a 10. Dude, I'm telling you, there is everything about this NFL slate really mirrors my college career. No differences.
Yeah. All right. Look, get it where you can, right? I don't blame you.
And it's even better than 2 5s. 2 5s beat out of 10. So do 4 3s. That equals a 12.
No. I knew you were going to go there. That's not true at all. That actually couldn't be further from the truth. So 11 1s beat out of 10. Stop it. Would you rather have a 1 11 times or a 10 once? It's the easiest answer in the world. A 10 once. That's living.
It depends on my age and where I'm at in life. Now would be the 10. In college, it would have been a different answer.
All right. Okay. Jamal Parker played on Owner's Box last night and placed 4th in the 50-cent contest just off your content. Thank you guys for all the Stokastic provides. Good shit, man. That's awesome. We had Drew D take down the first place, 20K on Sunday on Owner's Box. Said he would never have heard about Owner's Box if it wasn't for this channel. So that was awesome. Owner's Box link in the description still, guys. We can throw it in chat. $500 first match deposit bonus. They've been overlaying like wild. And Superflex, you never have to play. You don't have to get burned by a defense by playing one or not playing one. Really cool format, still an unsolved format. All of our tools at Stokastic also have Owner's Box for them. So if you're a sub, the Sims tool, the contest generator, ownership, player projections, everything. Let you know early, right? You're just joining the show now. Our guys have had our subs and viewers, I should say, on YouTube, had some great success on Owner's Box lately. I love to see it. We have one guy shipped the showdown just a couple weeks ago based on us running the Sims and him putting the lineup in. after a softball game. So I love it. That's what I want to see. But link in the description and in chat. If you have a pop-up blocker on, just turn it off. Sign up. You don't need a promo code, just a link, and up to $500 first match deposit bonus. So yeah, great place to play right now, man. They got basketball going too. But yeah, I love seeing that you guys are winning. Anyway, how you feeling, man? You feeling good? You ready to go? 10 games. Look at the sim. See what we got running for us.
Absolutely. And then after this, also, if people want information about the afternoon slate, Loughran and I are going to be recording an afternoon slate exclusive podcast. So we're going to be looking at the sims here for the main slate, and they'll be doing one on the podcast channel for the afternoon slate as well.
For sure. Copy paste dates. Last thing, and then we'll get to the sims, guys. Appreciate you bearing with us. Where can I get a tutorial for how to use the Sims tool once I bought it? Don't know how to use it. I'm glad you asked, because Greg has done a bunch of videos on the Sims tool for NFL and for NBA, baseball too, but we don't need to talk about that now. Just go. I mean, actually, the best way to do it, if you're in the Sims tool, go up top. You can see tutorials. Click that, and all the tutorial videos are right there. That's the best way to find it. Yo, I haven't had time at night to play NBA. I played the small slates this season because you know how it goes. Like, I just haven't been able to be. Yesterday I had time. I finally was able to use the late swap tool. That is such a sick tool, man. That is such a cool tool. That just made my life so. It's no longer just going in and like taking out the guy that's hurt and putting in a guy that's the same salary. It reconstructs the lineups, gives you the simmed ROI on them. I used it. I used it 3 times last night on Breaking News, because even though it was a 4-game slate, we had a lot of stuff pop up, and what a difference that makes.
Yeah, and we've got a bunch of new features that were added to it. I'm actually, right after this, I've got the podcast with you, going to go on Odd Shopper to do Andy's show, and then I'm recording a video on some of the new features also within the late swap tool. But that's one thing, like, if you guys have seen Tom Kennedy, who's been up top of like every single GPP so far this year, he just constantly is running the late swap tool for DraftKings and FanDuel this year.
Yeah, CEO of Stokastic. For sure. Chris Johnson said, congrats on the 100K, Greg. You can afford some 10s now.
This is true.
That's true. Awesome. All right. What's up?
I guess we should start eventually, but yeah, I was gonna say I'd go into chat and ask, like, how many 10s do we think I could afford now before we run out of the money I've won?
Yeah, man. Josh, anyone got a reliable website for defense, most rushing yards? If you're just looking for that, just go to ESPN team stats or NFL.com teams. There's a million of them, but those are the simplest breakdown. All right, let's do it. Jacob, what did we run? What size and what first percent payout did we run?
We have 10,000, 25%.
10,000 at 25%?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let's take a look. Go lineups first, and then we'll go. What do you want to do after that, like we usually do? Maybe exposures, and then we can break it down by stacks and positions?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go position by position, quarterbacks. We'll look at the different stacks that we're getting to and which quarterbacks.
So, I tweeted something today that is crazy when you think about it. Not that it got any people. Most people don't usually care about this stuff, but I find it very interesting. Derek Carr this year he's attempted 47 deep balls. The next closest is Hurts at 36, by the way. So and Derek Carr has missed time. Missed like what, half a game? Not a ton, but he's missed some time. 47 deep balls this season. 21 of those attempts have gone to Chris Olave, 15 to Rashid Shaheed, and 10 to Michael Thomas. Olave has 4 receptions and 0 touchdowns on 21 deep targets. Let that sink in for a second. 4 receptions on 21 deep targets, 0 touchdowns, deep targets, passes 20+ yards downfield, 118 yards, 19% receptions. Michael Thomas, 3 receptions on 10 deep targets, 68 yards and a touchdown. Now listen to this. Rashid Shaheed, 15 deep targets, 10 receptions, 67% reception, 390 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mention that because I'm seeing a decent amount of Derek Carr up top. That is crazy how Rashid Shaheed, coming into the season, was the clear wide receiver 3, has been the only functional deep target this season, whereas Chris Olave, nobody has been worse on as many targets.
Yeah, and it's something pretty regularly, if you guys ever check out our post-contest sims also, where we have been projecting Shaheed to have a lot of upside this year. It's been a pretty normal occurrence that he's been one of the highest projected ROI wide receivers on slates. And if you look at the lineups we're getting to right here, I mean, it's a lot of stacks involving Derek Carr, which I assume is going to mean a lot of Olave, a lot of Michael Thomas, a lot of Shaheed. And part of it, too, is just passing volume. There was a week where the Saints stack was the highest scoring on the slate, and they only scored like 10 points for actual real-life purposes, but it was just so much passing volume where I think it was something like Carr threw for 350 yards, and there was a ton of receptions getting spread out to a bunch of different guys. I could pull up which game that was. I think it was like 3 weeks ago off the top of my head. So just based on passing volume, you could get there, and that's where I think sometimes people might overlook a team like the Saints, just say like, they don't score a lot of points, their offense isn't all that good. It's like, yeah, that might be true, but here are the recent games for Derek Carr. 310 passing yards, 301 passing yards, 353 passing yards. They are not scoring a ton of points in most of these games, but it doesn't matter if you're throwing the ball 50 to 55 times.
Exactly. And for what it's worth, I don't think we are going to get a lot of Shaheed at all. I think it's going to be mostly Thomas and Olave and Kamara. And we'll see. We'll see. I don't think we're going to get a lot of Shaheed. This may actually end up being an ROI boost spot for me. Last week, I talked about him a lot at sub 4K. I jammed him in a lot of lineups. The reason I had a decent week was just kind of the jamming Shaheed with Carr, because had I not, a lot of those double stacks with Olave was not good. Shaheed ended up being great. Only 3 targets, though. But he has been targeted, relatively frequently. I don't think we get a ton of him now that his price is up to 4,500. Might be a manual adjustment for me on Shaheed if we're getting a lot of Derek Carr stacks.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll find out when we look at the lineups here in a second. And like you said, last week, it was not a great week for Chris Olave, 5 catches for 46 yards. But in terms of what we could expect volume-wise, he did still lead the team in targets with 9. So I assume he's going to be our most rostered Saints receiver, but we'll see. Maybe the exposures will show differently.
Go ahead and check. Go to just Saints.
Does look like there's a ton of Kamara in there. And Kamara is, we actually don't have really any Shaheed here, so you were right on that. And Kamara is a running back, and we've talked about this on this show. I've talked about it with Neil on my tournament strategy show that him and I do together. Kamara is one of the running backs I do not mind at all being paired with the quarterback in Derek Carr, because the target share going to Alvin Kamara is absolutely insane this year. He might as well have running back / wide receiver eligibility on DK, because if you look at his targets game by game, 5 targets last week. So last week was like his lowest target volume that we've seen, or second lowest of the entire season. The only other one was a blowout win where they didn't have to throw the ball as much. But so last week, 5 targets, ends up being like a floor game for him in terms of the passing game, but still 51 receiving yards and a touchdown. Other games this year, 14 targets against the Jaguars, 8 targets against the Texans, 14 targets against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You might as well think of him as a pass catcher you can combine with Derek Carr. Don't mind that he's running back eligibility.
No, not at all. By the way, guys, take a single second. Atone for your sins here. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. It's really not bad. I mean, that's a killer ratio. 54 thumbs up on 166 watching right now. That is wildly impressive. But just in case you forgot, subtle reminder to do so. The reason I didn't think we were going to get a lot of Shaheed was only because Eric and I took a quick look at this yesterday, and I didn't remember seeing much. Now, that could change. We might see projections change on Shaheed. And I know he's coming off a 3-target game, but the efficiency we've seen from him, I don't think you can really overstate that, right? He's been really efficient. He's been the only guy on the deep ball. And chat had mentioned a couple of people that Olave's giving up on routes. He's running half-assed routes. Yeah, Olave's having a very disappointing season, especially on it. My whole reasoning for playing Derek Carr and these guys last week was, all right, well, they've been inefficient. It's been ugly. But as Greg just mentioned, they've been throwing the ball a lot. And Derek Carr throws the ball deep so much more than anyone else. I mean, 11 more deep attempts than the next closest guys. That's significant to me. And eventually, you're going to get some of those to hit. And now you're going up against Chicago. I get it. Jacob, do me a favor here. Clear that filter and let's go to stack exposure. And then after we do the stack exposure, I want to remove 3-man stacks and see what they look like as well. So not yet, but let's see what 3-man stacks look like if you filter by the top. All right. I'll tell you this much. If I was getting the 3-man stacks this week, I think it probably is going to be Derek Carr stacks because of the price point, Greg.
Yeah, and just the passing volume that we were going over before. The players are not all that expensive. Derek Carr isn't that expensive as a quarterback. The most expensive pass catcher you have there is going to be Chris Olave as far as wide receivers go. And if he's going to throw the ball 50 times, which we've seen him do multiple times this year, it's not hard to envision a scenario where a bunch of these guys pay off their relatively cheap salaries.
I'm with you. I like it a lot. It's harder too to get to like Jalen Hurts triple stacks. Plus, getting the Jalen Hurts triple stacks, even though he's dealing with that knee and he might not be running as much, I still don't know if I want to do that. It's expensive too. Jalen Hurts with Brown and Devonta Smith and Goddard, who he's not expensive, but he's still one of the more expensive tight ends. That's a difficult approach. Can you sort by QB +2? A lot of Derek Carr this week.
A lot of Derek Carr. He is, if I'm doing the quick math here, was it 35? So more than a third of our lineups have Derek Carr. And then it looks like our second most rostered quarterback there, Jalen Hurts, 18%. We've got Lamar Jackson in double-digit percentage of lineups. Lamar Jackson's quietly had a really good year. Yeah. Really, really good. That MVP race is interesting this year because you have a lot of inconsistent play from quarterbacks. Like even Patrick Mahomes has had some shitty games. We've seen some bad games from Josh Allen. Like I don't think Tua is as good as those top end quarterbacks, but he hasn't really had the downswings of those other guys. But yeah, Lamar Jackson's been on the winning lineup off the top of my head at least twice this year.
You know what it is with Tua? Tua needs to beat a good football team first.
Yeah.
He does actually have the shortest odds right now for MVP, which is why on DraftKings at least, which to me is crazy. But he needs, like, if you go in there and you beat in Frankfurt, Germany, you beat a Chiefs team, right? You go beat a Chiefs team that has a absolute stalwart defense that it's hard to move the football on that Chiefs team. You go in there and you beat them and you beat them through the air. That starts looking really good. But you got blown out by the Bills. You got beat handily by the Eagles and the refs a little bit in that game, but you get the point. Hurts is +450. Mahomes is +450. Tua is +400 and Lamar's +550. That seems to make sense.
Yeah. And then over on FanDuel, it's Mahomes +270, Hurts +350, Tua +370. So different books kind of, it's like the same top three, but different books pricing it differently.
Yeah. Okay. Noah said, hey, Greg Laffy, what bring back, if any, would work with New Orleans? ? Foreman. That's a good question. I don't know if you need to hit the run back, honestly. I don't know if it's necessary. For me, it would still be DJ Moore, but it's a good Saints defense. I don't know, but no, I don't want to run it back with a Dante Foreman who's not a, elite pass catching back.
Let's check, if you wouldn't mind, Jacob, toggle off the stack exposures and go to the team exposures in a filter and filter by the Bears. Let's see where we're getting to on the other side. Yeah, pretty much nobody.
Yeah, a little bit of DJ Moore. A little bit of DJ Moore.
It's like, what? That's very little. We got him in 1 out of 150 lineups here.
Yeah. And honestly, are you that surprised by it? I'm not. It's a tough matchup. They're in a dome, but it's still Tyson Bagent who's getting the start. I think I'd honestly prefer not. Kevin Joseph said Foreman is good. He won me money. Listen, I've been a big Foreman fan for a while now. All right. Going back before Carolina, but it's still not an unless you think this plays out where Foreman early on gets like 2 rushing touchdowns and then they're playing with a lead. But if you think the Saints get out to a lead and they're winning, I think it's going to be tough for Foreman to get there. Plus, Roschon Johnson's getting some opportunities as well.
Yeah, it's hard to trust. And remember, too, some of those big Foreman games, to Lofty's point, Johnson was out. He was dealing with a concussion. So you got a team where it's a split backfield now. You've got a quarterback who we can't trust at all. And then we got wide receivers who, outside of DJ Moore, the ball kind of ends up getting spread out. It's not really a great spot for a run back, and you don't have to force it. Just because you're making a Saints stack that might have a couple of pass catchers with Derek Carr, even if that goes off, I don't think it guarantees that something from the Bears side does well on the other end.
Let's take a look at positional exposures for a second. Eric and I had a conversation yesterday where I said that I'm probably going to end up eating the chalk on Demario Douglas because even though he's lining up in the slot a lot, I think they could potentially move him outside a little bit with no Devontae Parker, with no Kendrick Bourne. Washington's biggest weakness, obviously, is they can't stop the deep ball. And now that pass rush looks a lot worse without Montez Sweat and Chase Young. It's ugly, but you know what? The Patriots are 3.5 point favorites. We're getting 58% exposure to Demario Douglas at a low 4K price point. I can totally understand why you guys wouldn't want to do that, but I'm looking at it from a slightly different approach, and it's who else are they getting the ball to? Like, I'll get to a little Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry too. If we're not getting any, I'll probably hit a boost and try and get to a little bit of that. Because Juju Smith-Schuster is just not the guy. Who else are they going to in this offense? I'm not shocked that we have 59% Demario Douglas, 36. I bet he has the highest simulated player ROI on the slate, or one of them, right? He has to.
Probably. And the funny thing is if off the top of my head, if I'm remembering correctly, the highest ROI player each of the last 2 weeks was Kendrick Bourne. Or maybe even the last 3 weeks was
right.
Kendrick Bourne. And now it's just Demario Douglas. And it's the same sort of idea as you have a Patriots team. The offense isn't good. Mac Jones isn't good. It's not like we project Mac Jones to be some stalwart quarterback or anything like that. We get to some exposure to him and to Douglas. Well, actually a lot of exposure to Douglas just based on price points and volumes. This Patriots team is frequently trailing in games. They have to throw to keep up. And now you have a scenario where Kendrick Bourne was getting a bunch of targets. He tears his ACL. He's out of the mix. And now Demario Douglas had 7 targets last week. You start to look around. It's like, well, who else is Mac Jones going to throw the football to? And he threw the football 30 times last week. You just kind of by default land on a cheap Demario Douglas who might get upwards of 10 targets.
That's where I'm at too, man. That's where I'm at too. It's not fun because it's Demario Douglas, but it is a really good matchup. I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'm pretty sure that each of the last 4 weeks, I've just been saying, target the Washington defense in the passing game. Target the Washington defense. Target the Washington defense. And the Washington defense has been bad. Okay? I get that now we're targeting the Washington defense with a Patriots team that is just equally as bad. No doubt about that. But at his what's he priced at? 4,000 flat? Yeah. Yeah, I can live with that. The passing yards from the Eagle or from the Commanders last week 315. Giants 250. That's like 500 for any other team, right?
Yeah, it's weighted on a scale. I mean, yeah. even though you're joking though, it kind of is because of the price points.
For sure. Atlanta 296, but Ritter threw for over 300. 273 to Justin Fields. And that again, that game, Fields annihilated them with DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Philly 311, Buffalo 218, but don't forget, they didn't need to throw the football. That was like a 38-0 game, 37-3. Almost 300 to Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? This has been a horrible pass defense, and I don't see them improving anytime soon. So
not only improving, but as Kevin Joseph mentions in the chat, maybe even worse now because they traded Chase Young to San Francisco. They trade Montez Sweat over to the Bears. So you have a team that's already been an absolute god-awful defense that got rid of probably their 2 biggest disruptors of the opposing passing game.
Yeah, I mentioned that. But yes, I agree.
My bad.
You're good. Yeah, you're taking their 2 best defensive linemen. You're taking like an elite pass rusher out too. Mac Jones might actually have some good time to throw. I don't know. I'm not, the funny thing is with these shows, it might sound like you and I are trying to talk somebody into doing something. I'm just talking through the way. I think we're just talking through the way that we see it. And with Demario Douglas, yeah, it's scary. But who else do you throw? Like the guy is one of the highest target shares on the team, and now Kendrick Bourne is out. I'll take my lumps if I'm wrong. I'll take my chances.
Yeah, and I do the same thing, by the way, also. Like, that's a big part of what I'm doing, especially on NBA Live before, because I'm literally building my lineups on the fly while we're doing that. So when somebody gets ruled out and I'm on a show with Eric, whoever else it might be, and we're talking about like, hey, who do we think is going to start? How many minutes do we think everybody's playing? It's basically the same thing what you and I are doing here is we're talking through these different scenarios, why we might want to get to different players. And it's kind of me working out which guys I want to be building my lineups around just by talking to my buddies on a show.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You guys along for the ride, which I love. Plus, I enjoy seeing your thoughts and opinions and outrageous comments in chat. That makes it far better. That's why we still do these shows live, honestly. But JM said, watch Washington have their best defensive performance of the season this week, typical NFL. Hey, totally possible. But over time, you still want to be on the right spots. Even if it doesn't work out, you still want to be in the right spots, right? Like, think of this. Had you played Atlanta in week 7 against Washington, or week 6, if you played Philly in week 8 against Washington, if you played, a lot of going back, look at these Russell Wilson in that. If you'd played teams against Washington all season, it's still going to work out in your favor in the long run. There will be weeks where their opponent doesn't have a good game, but you still have to look at it back and go, okay, well, all of these other weeks I loaded up on teams against Washington and it worked. So if it doesn't work this week, fine, but it's worked for us a lot. Anyway.
Yeah. It's basically worked every single week other than last week and the Bills week, like you had mentioned. So last week, the Giants only put up 14 points.
No, last week it worked. It was Philly. The week before was the Giants.
Week before was the Giants. So the Giants week, the Bills week, every other week, the Commanders have gotten crushed.
Wait a second. No, the Giants week, I think, actually worked because I think Darren Waller finally had it. I think Darren Waller was in tournament winning lineups.
Let me try to remember that.
I'm pretty sure Darren Waller had his first good game of the year against Washington.
That might be true, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, he had 7 for 98 and a touchdown.
Yep, that'll do. Yeah, he might have been in the GPP winning lineup that week. Oh, no, you know why he wasn't? Because that was one of the Kelsey weeks or something.
Not the Millie. He was in another, one of those mid-stakes that paid out $50K or something to first. I think he was in a double tight end format. But, yeah. Yeah, and Barkley had 3 for 41 and a touchdown receiving in that game. Nobody went nuts, but it's pretty crazy stuff how bad they've been. Anyway. Dude, Tyrod Taylor had 22 DraftKings points in that game. It's pretty good. All right.
Thanks, the Commanders.
Can we go back to stacks for a second, Jacob? I want to see. Actually, I have a better idea. Can we go to lineups? And then what's the way to do this? Yeah. Do that. I want to see Mac Jones stacks. So that would be what? I guess we could just do player and then Mac Jones, because I assume almost any Mac Jones lineup is going to be stacked.
Yeah.
Let's see. No, you go back to lineups for a second. That was right. But you lost the filter. So Ramondre Stevenson's another guy I don't mind. He might be someone that Mac ends up throwing to a lot more.
Yep.
It looks like, tell me if you see something different. It looks like most of these QB +2 for Mac Jones are. Oh, there's a Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas. Okay.
Yeah. So Douglas, I wish my eyesight didn't suck so I could see this a little bit better. But so Demario Douglas, that'll help me. Yeah, so actually a couple. I see a Hunter Henry,
Mike Gesicki in there with Douglas. Most of all of them have Douglas, which I'm fine with.
And then the ones that weren't in our top 150, but if you look just below this, there are a bunch of Ramondre Stevenson lineups. So if you guys wanted to just differentiate them a little bit, you could unselect some of the ones that don't have Stevenson, like one of the Hunter Henry ones, and you could select one of the Stevenson ones right behind it. Like there isn't that big of a difference in terms of the simulated ROI. It's not going to be something that would, massively impact your expected bottom line, but you could diversify a little bit by taking some more of those Ramondre Stevenson lineups. And it is very, very possible that Stevenson turns back into the player he was last year and takes on more of a Kamara role now that the Patriots are just so thin at wide receiver. They might just have to throw him the football.
Yeah, I'm with you. Go scroll all the way to the top for a second, Jacob. I want to see something. We were looking at who we're stacking it with, Greg, but let's take a look at what it allows you to do with the rest of some of these lineups.
Adams, Thielen, Hawkinson,
Yeah.
Jacobs.
I mean, you can
Lamb, Brown. Yeah, you just get studs everywhere else.
look at that. Look at the second one. So obviously running back, you're not paying a premium on Chuba Hubbard or Ramondre, but you do have Josh Jacobs in the flex, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb in that secondary stack between the Eagles and Cowboys. There's 3 studs in that lineup. Kamara, Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, TJ Hawkinson with Ramondre. God, it allows you. Here's a perfect lineup that Ben was talking about on Tuesday where he was saying maybe if you go cheap at quarterback, instead of paying a premium for studs, you go balanced. Kamara, obviously paying up a little bit there, but Kamara, Stevenson, Pittman, Amari Cooper, Demario Douglas, Hawkins. That's a sick-ass lineup, man. That is a really, really good lineup. Totally balanced. No scrubs outside of Douglas.
Who we're not even considering a scrub in the context of this slate anyway.
No, I'm sorry. Price point as far as salary goes. That's a crazy lineup. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So a bunch of guys. Wait, I lost it. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. How much is TJ Hawkinson priced at?
Hawkinson
52.
This week. Yeah, 52. Not all that expensive.
No, 4 guys above 6K though. You have Hawkinson in that 5K range. Same with Ramondre Steve. I really like that type of build a lot. A lot. I might play that very lineup this week.
I think a lot of chat might as well.
Well, it just shows what you can do and when I say balanced, it's not even that balanced, right? You still have Kamara and Jacobs.
I agree. I like a lot of these Patriot stacks. You're just hoping that Mac Jones doesn't suck this weekend, but something's got to give. We got a stoppable force against a movable object. Mac Jones against the Commanders defense, and I strongly prefer the Patriot side of the game.
Me too. They could just be terrible. But you know what could also happen is that Mac Jones has like 19, but Demario Douglas goes for 20 and Steve. They could all go for decent games without going crazy if the rest of your lineup comes through. Let's take a look at Jacob. Stay here. Filter instead of Mac Jones. Let's go. What do you want to look at? Do you want to look at Derek Carr and then we can look at some expensive stacks?
Yeah, well, we looked at some of the Derek Carr and the Saints. I'm kind of curious to see what else we're getting to as well.
All right, so let's see what the Hurts lineups look like. Because they're gonna look a lot different than this.
I wonder who we're stacking with the most. AJ Brown has just been absurd as of late. I know that you've been trying to find the you've been trying to find when other wide receivers from the Eagles are going to go off. Is it still just AJ Brown, or do you think this could be the Devontae Smith game?
Well, to be fair, Devontae Smith had 7 for 99 and a touchdown last week. He had a good game.
Very good game.
If you tack one more yard onto that, I'm not saying that you can because it didn't happen. 7 for 99 and a touchdown, that was 23. You have 7 for 100 and a touchdown. You're now talking about a 26 fantasy point game at 6,700. You'd be very happy with that. So
agreed.
What's that?
I said agreed. The one thing that's been annoying to me about Smith this year is, other than the fact that he's been inconsistent, DraftKings has never priced him down. He's stayed super, super expensive. So you always run into this issue where, like, I've always been like, oh, I would like to get to some of Devonta Smith this week. And then you go look at his price point. He's really expensive. It's like, well, I could pay a few $100s more for A.J. Brown.
It's the exact same thing that I've said about Jalen Waddle too.
Yeah.
Same thing, except Jalen Waddle's been even more expensive. Last week, they priced Smith down to 6,700. I thought in that matchup against the Commanders, it was very fair. I thought 6,700 against the Commanders was very fair. And he had a good game. It's just A.J. Brown is so good that it overshadows everything. But yeah, you're not going to turn your head at 7 for 99 a touchdown. But yes, A.J. Brown, clearly the guy. And my assumption is that we're not going to get much Devonta Smith now that he's 7,100 at all.
7,100. A.J. Brown's also more expensive because he's 8,600. It's the first time this year that it's the first time this year that A.J. Brown at $8,600 has been priced above 8,000. So he is 1,500 more expensive than Smith, but I do think that the price point is certainly warranted based on the fact that A.J. Brown would be in the discussion, I think, of best current wide receivers in the NFL if it was not for all the ridiculousness that Tyreek Hill is doing.
For sure. Hey, at the end of the day, they're 75 yards apart. They're also different types of receivers. Can you walk us through some of these stacks and what we're seeing here from Jalen Hurts stacks, which, by the way, a lot of single skinny stacks with Jalen Hurts. I have no issues with that whatsoever. Both of those guys costing like a combined 17,000. It makes sense.
And that's the main reason I think most of our Eagle stacks are single stacks as opposed to double stacks, is because it's so cost prohibitive to go Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. Like it's not even viable unless you're just going crazy punting at the other positions. So Jalen Hurts stacks, they look really good here. And I like the single stacks. You just can't really force in double stacks all that frequently because of the price points on Smith and Brown. If you do it, like, it has to be Dallas Goedert at tight end.
Exactly. What do you make of some of these ones up top, Jacob? If you scroll to the top for these Jalen Hurts lineups.
Yeah, sure. So our number one here, which pretty big gap between our number one Eagle stack and all of the rest of them, and it is Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown being combined together. We've got DeMarcado and Chuba Hubbard as the running backs. One thing I've noticed about DeMarcado is earlier in the week, this is like a few weeks in a row that DeMarcado's projected really well in the Sims and has come up in a bunch of lineups. I have noticed, though, as we've gotten closer to lock the last couple of weeks, as I've run more and more Sims, his exposure has gone down. It should be for multiple reasons. It could be because other running back value opens up. It could also be because his ownership starts to go up, so we start to make him look a little bit less valuable as he becomes more popular. So DeMarcado popping up in some of our highest projected lineups right now, but I wouldn't be stunned if that ends up changing by the time that we get to Sunday. Chuba Hubbard, really interesting scenario with him and Miles Sanders, where we got the report last week that it's going to kind of be a rotation, what the Panthers are going to do between Hubbard and Sanders. Overall, Chuba Hubbard's been much better than Miles Sanders this year, and he's been more effective in the passing game. So I do like the two cheap running backs we're getting to. I'm just curious to see what his DeMarcado's ownership end up being by tomorrow. And then as far as the pass catchers go, you're seeing a way different outlook of a lineup here compared to what we were getting from Patriot stacks. For Patriot stacks, it was like, hey, Patriots and then studs everywhere else. Whereas when you're making Eagle stacks, it's the studs are the Eagles, and then you're saving salary elsewhere with guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, with guys like Michael Thomas, who's on the cheaper end, Giants defense. Saquon Barkley is a running back that I like a good amount this week against the Raiders, though. For sure.
And you know what? You mentioned a lot of this, but you know what a lot of it's going to come down to is the cheap running backs in these Hurts stacks. You know, I see some Jalen Hurts with like Alvin Kamara, but there's also a lot with DeMarcado and Chuba Hubbard, and guys like that. There's a lot of that. I don't think it's crazy. FF Doom said, I understand the Mac thesis, but I'm putting my money on a QB. I assume you mean I'm not putting my money on, or you're saying you don't want to put your money on a QB who's had 3 games under 7 fantasy points and no one to pass to. I get it, man. I do. I would say, just if that's the case, don't totally overlook the receivers or the pass catchers in this game either. Like, you don't have to play Mac, but if there's spots where you're one-offing, I even if you don't want to play Mac, I don't think that's a bad idea because you're paying nothing for them. Greg mentioned it earlier, and it's a pretty salient point that shouldn't go overlooked. So much of this is dependent on salary itself. Like you're getting these guys at nothing. It's the cheapest you're probably going to get Stevenson all year. Mac Jones is sub 5K. But even besides him, Mike Gesicki's $2,600. Hunter Henry's $3,300, $3,600. And as far as tight ends go, he's had a couple decent games this year. DeMario Douglas is 4K. These guys are all really cheap. So these are your punts. And if you're punting against the Commanders defense, I think you could do a lot worse.
Yeah. And then also something I was just thinking of while we were looking at that top lineup is this is going to be like a weird analogy, but in a lot of ways, Saquon Barkley is kind of the running back version of Derek Carr as of late. I know people think of Saquon Barkley as being much better than Derek Carr. Barkley's been dog shit from an efficiency standpoint this year, but he gets so much volume that it kind of doesn't matter. Do you remember how many touches he had last week?
I know he had 41 total looks and almost 60% of the offensive plays went to Saquon Barkley.
39. He had 36 carries and 3 receptions.
Yeah. And 5 targets, right? So 41 looks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The efficiency was terrible. It was awful. He had of his 3 catches, they went for a total of 0 yards.
Yeah.
0 yards on 3 catches. And his 36 carries went for 128 yards. So 3.6 yards per carry, 5 targets, 0 yards average per target because he finished with 0 receiving yards on 3 receptions. If he is going to continue to get this kind of volume in a matchup against the Raiders, it does not matter. If you're going to give a running back nearly 40 touches, it is nearly impossible for them to not score at least like 15 to 20 fantasy points.
Yep. I said this to Ben on Tuesday. We saw it a little bit differently. And it might have been even Eric yesterday. The thought process is I don't really give a shit if you're good or not, if you're getting that many opportunities. And it looks like Daniel Jones is going to be back too. If you think that Daniel Jones is just going to massively take away Saquon Barkley's workload, you're nuts. Now, would Barkley get more opportunities if Tommy DeVito was at quarterback and Zach Wilson's on the other side? Yeah, obviously. Like, do you know who the leading receiver for the Giants was last week?
It felt like Barkley with 0 receiving yards.
Well, close. It was Darren Waller with 4.
Sick.
Yeah, they had -9 passing yards on the day.
And won.
No, they lost in overtime.
No, they won.
What do you mean?
My dad is convinced they won. He just refuses to acknowledge it as a loss.
They should have, which is the crazy part. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. If Barkley's going to see that type of workload, I'll take my chances any day of the week. Plus, it's not like the Raiders have a good run defense.
No, and I mean, talk about another team in turmoil. Like they just fired McDaniels. The front office just got overhauled. So who knows what that team is going to look like going forward. And yeah, the touches for Saquon Barkley are definitely influenced by the overtime where, I mean, the game was totally fucked up by Daboll. They're winning the game at the end. They're running the clock out. He kicks a field goal and they could have just picked up a 1-yard first down to win the game. It goes to overtime. They end up losing. So while that did bolster the touches of Barkley and also DeVito coming in at QB, even in previous games, the game before 21 carries, 4 targets for Barkley. Against the Bills, 24 carries, 5 targets. It's just a crazy amount of workload and a pretty solid matchup.
For sure. We had Stokastic that said you can fit 4 studs if you play Mac Jones.
Yeah.
It's the only reason we're talking. It's because you can do crazy stuff.
Yeah, we're not playing Mac Jones at $8,000. Like it's not like we're looking. It's like, do I want to pay up for Mac Jones or Jalen Hurts? It's like you're getting like 2 Jalen Hurtses for 1 Mac Jones, kind of, because he's like half the price.
And clearly, you need the studs to go off in a situation like that. Like you almost need the studs to go off more than you need Mac Jones to have a good game.
Yeah, and the other thing too about DFS, which there's no other DFS sports that has this kind of a difference. Is there anything even remotely close to any other position in any DFS sport? The difference in value between real life and DFS between a quarterback?
No.
It's by far the most important position for real life football. For fantasy football, other than defense, it's the second least important.
Which is just nuts. You're right. Looking at quarterback exposures, by the way, I got to tell you, these exposures look fine to me. If you're playing 150 lineups, even if you're playing 20, just take the percent here. And I have 6-7% Mac Jones. No problems with that at all. 18% Jalen Hurts, a lot of single stacks, a couple double stacks. 12% Lamar Jackson. I would imagine a lot of those Lamar stacks are also skinny stacks. No problems with that at all. 7% Minshew against Carolina.
Yeah.
The only one that's a little surprising to me is only 3% Dak.
Yeah, and I mean, if you scroll to the top to kind of take what you're saying and make it applicable to both 20 max and to like 3 max. So if you're looking at this, I would say like if you're somebody who's playing 3 max, I saw before somebody in YouTube chat, Vic David Figueroa, had asked for single entry, what would we be doing? Based on the data right now, I'd probably be playing Derek Carr in single entry. And then for 3 max, it would be like 1 Derek Carr lineup, 1 Jalen Hurts lineup, 1 Lamar Jackson lineup. And then even for something like 20 max, I'd be like, all right, play, 7 Derek Carr lineups, play 4 Jalen Hurts, play 3 Lamar Jackson, 1 or 2 Minshew, 1 or 2 Mac Jones. And it is a pretty reasonable way to look at this, even though we're building lineups specifically for 150 max. Like you kind of see how these lineups would also make sense in a 20 max or 3 max type setting.
Absolutely. And for what it's worth, I would have some Mac Jones and some single entry and 3 max contests too. I actually don't have an issue with it. I've run, just looking at the last few weeks, some of it worked, some of it didn't. Run Josh Dobbs in single entry in the SPY. By the way, they cashed. They just min cashed. So, but it still worked. Not the way I wanted it to, but it worked because the studs went off in a lot of those spots. Ritter in week 6, single entry. So I'd be crazy to tell you that I won't have a little bit of Mac Jones and some single entry stuff. So yeah, but it's also, for what it's worth, I'm not playing one single entry lineup. I look at them collectively. And if it's like, I have 8 single entry teams, do I have a problem with one of them, maybe 2 of them being Mac Jones if I love the lineup? No, not at all. I'm going to want some Hurts and Lamar. Definitely going to want some Derek Carr. Went a lot of Derek Carr in single entry last week. But no, I don't have an issue with it. Plus, there's some bad. Once you get, how about this, Greg? Here's a thought experiment for you. What happens once you get past Hurts and Lamar Jackson, and if you want to throw Derek Carr in there too? Look at the other quarterbacks on the slate. If you're like, man, I can't play Derek Carr or Mac this week, that's fine. But your alternatives are Minshew, CJ Stroud against the Bucs. I mean, it's not like you have a lot of great alternative, lesser-owned, cheap options.
No, and I mean, if you look at Dak Prescott, we do have him projected as the 3rd most popular QB behind Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. Prescott, people weren't on Prescott last week, and then he has a big game that everybody's looking to go play Dak Prescott and the Cowboys passing attack. And then also take note of the fantasy point projections. If you guys see, we have that column on right in the middle here. So there's the simulated player ROI, there's the exposure column, projected fantasy points. That's what the FP stands for. And you could see when we were talking about quarterbacks before and how it's so much less of an important position for DFS relative to real life football. And yeah, thank you for sorting that there, Jacob, is look at the difference in projection between Mac Jones and Jalen Hurts. It's 6 fantasy points, which isn't nothing, but the difference between the top quarterback and the worst quarterback, or Mac Jones being amongst the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, think about that in relation to the best running backs, the best wide receivers, compared to the worst running backs, the worst wide receiver. It's a way, way smaller gap.
For sure. The range of outcomes is much smaller, for sure. What else do you want to look at? We got a few minutes before we go. This has been a productive show breaking all this down. Again, these ugly slates are more fun. I'm telling you guys.
Yeah, let's go and look at our running back and wide receiver positions and just see which players we're getting to the most of there. Because I know we looked at the top of wide receiver and we saw that we were getting to a lot of Douglas. I think it was 58% or something like that, if I remember. And then running back, who do we end up getting to beyond Kamara? Because I remember we saw I got a lot of Kamara in our Saints.
Let's take a look. Before we do, though, guys, by the way, the Bet365 promo is still running. I don't know when they'll get rid of it. The problem is with these, we'll find out like the morning of that it's not here anymore. And it could be tomorrow morning. It could be 2 weeks. I don't know. Bet5, get 150. If you're in Colorado, Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey, Iowa, or if you are in Kentucky. You could have tailed We could have tailed. We could have gone Deontay Johnson anytime touchdown scorer yesterday, and would have been pretty fun. You could have used your 150 in order to do so, but it's the simplest, easiest money, guaranteed money that you're going to get, because you don't have to lose. You don't have to lose the bet, and you don't have to win the bet. You just get 150 when you deposit 10 and bet 5. It takes you a minute, 2 minutes to sign up and deposit $10. You get 150. That's it. Win or lose your $5 bet, doesn't matter. So you could have a bad week and then go, oh, wait, I forgot. I got that 150 coming my way. Wait, my week's not bad anymore. Pretty simple. You're making $75 a minute if it takes you 2 minutes to do this. $150 in 2 minutes. Iowa, Ohio, Colorado, New Jersey, Virginia, and Kentucky. That is bet 5, get 150. You got to be 21 years or older, 18 plus if you're in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER, but it's solid. Oh, one more thing, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
We still have, I know it's an NFL show. The NBA lineup generator for the week is $4.99 for the first week.
Yeah, the promo code is NBA Treat. And when we're discussing the different promos to do, one of the main reasons I really want to do a cheap NBA lineup generator is because I've had a lot of success to start the NBA season, and I was posting screenshots, and the number one response, other than like people who are just saying, hey, congrats, that's really cool, is people who say like, oh, I can't do that because I don't have much of a bankroll. I can't play a bunch of lineups. I started playing DFS and sports betting. I only had $20 at the time. I made a deposit to FanDuel for $20. I started playing for just $1 a day, and it would have really helped me grow my bankroll quicker if I had something like the NBA lineup generator just build good lineups for me. So you don't need to have a massive bankroll to start playing DFS. You just need tools to help you build better lineups. And the NBA lineup generator is the easiest way to do that for cheap. It's going to build lineups for you. FanDuel, DraftKings, up to 20 of them. You don't have to play 20 if you just want to play one. That is totally cool. But for $4.99, you are going to get lineups that are expected to profit in the long run for you. So build some lineups in there, whether it's FanDuel or DraftKings. If you want to play chalky lineups, contrarian lineups, you select those settings. It's going to give you some lineups that are expected to be plus EV. And then you can play all 20 of them if you want, or you could pick and choose some of the lineups you like. But this is the most cost-effective way to start off your NBA DFS playing.
Yeah, man. And plus, basketball's every day. So it's 7 days, $5 for 7 days, less than $1 a day. You can be playing $5 a night like Greg was doing earlier when he first started, and this is still valuable to you. It's worth it. And if you don't like it at the end of the week, you're like, oh, damn, $5. It's not. You'll never remember that. But I think you're going to love this tool. So link in the description to all that stuff, whether it's the NBA lineup generator or our Sims tools. You want to jump on the Sims tools. You like what you see. You want to try them out. We got different Sims packages down there. No add-ons necessary. All of our tools included. And Bet365. So we got you covered on everything. Let's take a look at exposures before we go. We'll go running back. So Alvin Kamara up top. I get it. Josh Jacobs, 59%. All right. His price has come down enough. Then it's like Chuba Hubbard, DeMarcado. I like Ramondre this. This is the first week, I think, all season that I'll probably be with or above the field on Ramondre. The first week of the entire season. And then it gets down to, we don't have a lot of Barkley, but we did have a decent amount of Barkley in those Hurts lineups. Pretty flat once you get past this. It's pretty top heavy on a few of those other guys.
I'm cool being on. Pollard continues to be chalky, and I do not mind being underweight to him. He looks like not the same player this year as he did last year. He gets injured, hurts his leg at the end of last year, which a lot of people have been telling me like, hey, you got to give Tony Pollard more time. He had the leg injury last year. Guys, 26 years old is not young for a running back, and he was great when he was spelling Zeke last year with the Cowboys, and even in the games that Zeke was out, Pollard looked like a stud as a starter. So there was a point in time where he could handle that big workload. I think that leg injury might have really changed him permanently going forward. It supposedly wasn't totally 100% to start the year. If you start an NFL season not 100%, it doesn't get better from there. So Pollard continues to be chalky, and I'm cool that we come in underweight to him on the Sims.
Me too. I would like to get closer to the field on Barkley, but I understand why we aren't right now. Like, I honestly wouldn't mind getting less Jacobs and more Barkley and kind of finding a way to balance that out a little bit.
Yeah, and that'll definitely. What time is that game? One of the late games?
New York is a late game. Oh, both of them. Yeah, both same game. Yeah, it's a 4 p.m. game.
All right. Yeah. So that'll be another one that we talk about when we record the afternoon podcast after this, is what we're going to do with Jacobs and Barkley, both of them in the same game playing against each other. I do agree with you, though. If I was entering these lineups right now, I'd probably be inclined to do like a slight ROI boost down for Jacobs and a slight ROI boost up for Barkley to make them a little bit closer.
Let's try it real quick before we go.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Like 15 up, 15 down?
Let's do 15 and 15.
Yeah, feel free to just search that.
Yeah.
All right. And then go to lineups, unfavorite and favorite again.
That also gets Barkley there into 2 of our top 4 lineups.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
You saw that fast? All right.
Yeah, so now we're at 48% Jacobs, 15% Barkley. So it got us like relatively to what we had before. We're getting to 50% more Barkley because we had him in like 9% of lineups. Now it goes up to 15. And then Jacobs, who was like 60 before, goes down to 48.
Yeah.
58. Yeah.
So you guys can see too, like with ROI boost, sometimes it's a subtle effect. You can, if you want to jam a guy, you'll probably have to hit a heavy boost. But all right, cool. Hey, you can follow Greg at G Ehrenberg DFS. Good show, man. This is I love doing this. I love kind of working through the process of what we're getting and why we're getting it. Especially with some of these bad quarterbacks and bad teams this week. It opens things up a lot. It really does.
Yeah, and we'll see what ends up happening on Sunday as projections get updated, as some ownership gets updated. There's always slightly different results by the time you get to Sunday. So make sure if you guys are running sims on like a Friday, you definitely want to be redoing it on Sunday. But yeah, it's a good like outline of what it is that we're liking so far.
G Ehrenberg DFS right there. Laffy_D on the Twitters. You see the names right there. Thanks to Jacob as always for producing this one, doing a killer job as always. We'll see you guys back here soon. I'll be back on Sunday. Greg and I are going to go record the afternoon podcast. That's a great podcast. I'm telling you, whether you listen on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon while the games are going, just throw the AirPods in. It's a podcast exclusive. So there's no video anyway. Throw one AirPod in, watch the games and get your breakdown, get the analysis you need for these are big. It's funny because I don't know why more people don't do afternoon slates. Like NBA main slate is 100K up top. Afternoon slate for football is 100K up top. There's some big prize pools with some big first place prizes out there. So soak up the information. We'll see you over there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you listen. Ben and I already did the Tuesday one, single entry 3 max, and we broke down the entire week 8 slate, gave you some good tips on roster construction going into week 9. We do it every week. So come join us for that. And we'll see you guys back here for the next one. Tournament Strategy Show with Greg and Neil tomorrow at 1 Eastern? 1?
Yeah, 1 Eastern time.
1 Eastern. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.